What's going on, everybody? Let's talk about Miami's 30-7 win against Southern Miss. There's a lot to get into with this one, and there's a lot to talk about with next game against Texas A&M because I believe these two games have really built up for that Texas A&M game. There's some positives from today, but also some negatives, some things that they've got to correct moving forward. Okay, first off, let's talk about the positives of what I saw with the defense in the second half. Held Southern Miss to 91 yards. They were down 7-3 in the second quarter. I'm sure many of you were wondering, is Miami going to be in for a dogfight? Are they going to turn the corner? And certainly they did that in the second half. Held Southern Miss to 91 yards, like I said. And also, Frank Gore Jr. was not able to get going whatsoever. 7 carries, 10 yards, had 178 yards the first game, so certainly they bottled him up. They did a great job. I thought the defensive line did a good job on really containing him, and also, Southern Miss did a good job of throwing the ball downfield, which I will get into in a little bit. But Miami played without Akeem Mesidor, and I think that he makes a big impact. Mario Cristobal called him the best defensive player in that first game. It's hard to argue that. Mesidor was all over the place. He had a small walking shoe on the sideline. Noticed it in pregame warmups. Definitely reported that on the website before the game started. So anybody that hasn't checked out the website, definitely check that out for any more information other than what's going on with the channel. So Elijah Roberts gets the start in place of Mesidor. A big drop off in my opinion, although Roberts is a guy really trying to make his mark with his team. But the defensive line, once again, I thought they did a good job. Nigel Kelly had that sack late in the game, but Leonard Taylor and Jake Lichtenstein also had sacks. They did a pretty good job. It was a little up and down with the quarterback pressure. Zach Wilkie was making his first start. As you guys saw on the channel, that was expected. True freshman for Southern Miss. He did make some throws downfield. Let's get right into that right now. I do think it is a bit concerning what we saw with the cornerbacks in particular today. DJ Ivey gives up a big long play over 30 yards. Also, Daryl Porter comes in, and to Corey Couch, they give up a combined 30-yard catch. Malik Curtis gets in there, gets his first start. However, he gives up that big touchdown catch. Once again, over 30 yards. Notice the trend that Miami's starting to pile up with these yards. They're giving up big plays downfield. Also, to Corey Couch had a pass interference call in the first half. So there are some negatives. There are some things that need to be corrected. The reason why the cornerback play is so big, not just moving forward for the rest of the season, obviously, but against Texas A&M. I've already watched their first game against Sam Houston State. I have a breakdown on the site on that. Looking forward to watching their second game before Miami plays them as well. Thing that stands out to me with Texas A&M is that speed on the perimeter. They've got about 3 or 4 guys that can really get loose, and that's why I think the cornerback play is so important. In particular, I think the smaller type guys that they have at corner, to Corey Couch, I touched on Malik Curtis, and also Daryl Porter. I think all 3 of those guys are going to be big against A&M. Certainly, Miami gave up some big passes downfield. However, Tyrique Stevenson is a huge bright spot on how he played today. I particularly was very impressed with how he played. I thought early he had a nice tackle, really hard hit there early on. Also, he had a nice pass breakup. While other cornerbacks were giving up big passes, Tyrique actually came up with a good pass breakup downfield on Jason Brownlee, their top receiver. Thought that was good for Tyrique to do that. Then follows it up, not just with the pass breakup later, he gets an interception. That was great to see, and also punt return. He was back there in place of Xavier Restrepo, who had been dealing with a little minor injury. He did play today, but Stevenson got that nod to handle the punt return duties, and that 30-yard return set up a big touchdown by Tyler Van Dyke to Keyshawn Smith. Really kind of turned the page in terms of Miami getting upset in this one because it really stretched their lead there in the third quarter, and I think Miami just kind of held on from there. So talking about the defense, they certainly got to clean up the big passes that they give up, but I touched on it. They had some positives. The yardage total in the second half, only 7 points allowed, and they were able to contain Frank Gore, really shut him down. So that was good for the defense there. So let's talk about Miami's passing offense, in particular with Tyler Van Dyke. I thought his comments after the game were very interesting, just for him to open up the way he did in terms of how he played. He said he was disappointed, and frankly, he said if he plays like he did today, they're not going to win next weekend against Texas A&M. I think that is extremely important for not just the leader to say that, but for someone that really recognizes how they played. And I think that's very important. I think a lot of times guys have not been honest in years past with how they played and what it means moving forward. So the fact that Tyler said that, I feel like all the other players can look at their performance as well and understand that it's going to take a lot to win at Texas A&M. So with Tyler, some things that we kind of noticed early on in the first half, he did throw that interception. His completion percentage wasn't great. great, but he did pick it up in the second half. He goes 8 of 9, 100 yards and a touchdown in the second half. So that was good. He felt like that flea flicker to Keyshawn was his best throw of the day. And actually, this was another really encouraging thing from Tyler after the game. He said he's planning on, when he gets back to campus after the game, he's planning on throwing at the facility, wants to correct a few things. I think for a guy taking ownership like that, in particular, once again, a captain, a quarterback, a guy that is expected to lead, for him to do that, it says a lot about him and maybe the direction of this team. I think he can really work with some receivers and just kind of continue to tighten up on that. Michael Redding III talked about their group chat, that they're really, talking about those kinds of things, just doing that extra work. So that's a positive that he's going to put in that work and be ready for Texas A&M. And Tyler's numbers on the day weren't terrible. I mean, he spoke as he was disappointed, but he finished 20 of 29 for 241 yards, a touchdown and interception. Certainly we've seen him throw better than that, but 69% completion percent, for the most part, it wasn't completely terrible. He just knows he's got to be better, and he's absolutely right. He does have to be better. There's some throws in the first half that I thought he was just a little bit off on, and he spoke about that mechanically. Felt like his arm was down a little too low, needs to get it up a little bit. So he felt like that might be an issue, but certainly I think part of the issue is, and he's not going to say it, but the wide receivers have to step up, and he's really working with some different guys there. What we saw today is he really, threw the ball a lot to the inside guys. With Restrepo had a lot of catches, as well as Brashard Smith. I know many of you are really excited to see what Brashard can do. We saw a glimpse of it today, having a big game. With the multiple catches, he had that really impressive catch early on. It was an offside call. Tyler throws it deep in traffic, essentially a free play, and Brashard came down with it. For a guy that's not big in height, he certainly did a good job in coming down with it, and that's what he needs to do, because it's not just about making catches when you're wide open. A guy like Brashard needs to be able to come down with those kind of catches. A play like that should really gain even more trust with Tyler and the offense and offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis. Once again, Miami wanted to stick to the running game, and they did a good job of it for the most part. Although I do think Cristobal was correct. There were more plays to be had. They've got to run harder. Once they see a hole, they've got to hit it. Henry Parrish led them in rushing again today. 21 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Jalen Knighton returned. To me, he was just okay. There was a couple times he kind of lost his balance, getting to the edge on one time. I thought another time he could have hit the hole a little bit harder if he would have saw it quicker. It could just be first game, but he gets out there. But certainly they've got to get him right for the next game. He finished with 5 carries, 17 yards. And Thad Franklin, a guy that has been overlooked, but he's continuing to produce. So we will see if Thad can continue to stay in this mix as Miami's replacing these guys that were expected to be on top of the depth chart or in the mix with Don Chaney and Trevante Citizen. But now it's kind of some new guys, in particular with Thad, gets elevated, takes advantage once again. Today, 13 carries, 66 yards and a score. Good to see out of Thad, just that bigger back. And look, what we've been talking about all offseason, throughout fall camp, and even with these first 2 games, it's all about the build-up to Texas A&M. Will Miami be ready to play a competitive game and maybe pull off the upset in College Station, which is not going to be easy? I've been impressed with Texas A&M, not just their talent, but their speed on both sides of the ball. I like their secondary, which I think is going to present trouble or present challenges for Miami's passing offense. And then also on offense, I touched on they've got the receivers, and then A-Chain certainly can do some things, and Haynes King looked better in the second half in his first game. So a lot of challenges with Texas A&M, and Miami needs to put it all together. For Miami to pull this off, they're going to need to be playing well. And I do think, with Mario Cristobal really understanding essentially what it's going to take in a game like this, and maybe he can draw some comparisons to what happened last year when he took his Oregon team into Ohio State early on in the year and pulled off the upset there. I think there's certain styles of ways to win this game. Just initially, I think if Miami can grind it out and get that running game going, it might not look as pretty as you guys want it to, or as a lot of people would want to, but they've got to find a way to stay in the game, grind it out, and really get that running game going. So Zion Nelson entered the game, made his season debut. It'll be interesting to see if his role, because he was on that snap count limit today. It'll be interesting to see if he goes ahead and starts at left tackle. I would assume so. John Campbell, he didn't play with Zion there. So when Zion came in, Campbell came out, and I think that is certainly a precursor to what you should look forward to in the future. Although Campbell is going to be ready to go if they need him to, but At this moment, I expect Nelson to take over at left tackle and then Scaife to stay at right tackle the way it stands right now. You know, another thing that we saw with the offensive line today, in addition to Zion coming back, was Inez Cooper, freshman, put on that 37 jersey, became that tackle eligible offensive lineman. And, you know, I thought that gave, you know, Miami a different look. I thought it was interesting that they would do that early on in the season. However, maybe they were just doing that because they felt like they wanted to show something to Texas A&M. I would have liked to have seen that in a big game if they felt like they were struggling in the running game or wanted to mix it up in game, in a big game, maybe an ACC opponent. If it's not against Texas A&M, maybe you do that then, but they already showed it now, and we'll see if they're going to continue to use that moving forward. Certainly you're doing that to try to get some, you know, advantages with numbers with the offensive linemen, with some guys on defense as well. So you're trying to have that advantage, whatever the number might be. You're just trying to go at least one more, you know, guys to block over the defensive guys. So just something to watch for moving forward. You know, once again, I just think today was a solid win. You know, 30-7, when it didn't look like it definitely didn't have to end that way. You know, Miami came out in the second half. Some players touched on it. They felt like they made some adjustments. They were expecting the Wildcat offense, and they didn't do that with Southern Miss. So they made some adjustments. They made some adjustments on offense as well. Like I said, Tyler started connecting a little bit better, and they just started becoming more effective and more efficient on offense, which led to them just pulling away. And that's what you expect. Not every game is going to be 60-0. Southern Miss had that veteran defense, and certainly they did everything they could to stay in the game, but Miami just, you know, overpowered them essentially. But definitely drop in the comments below, what are some topics you're really concerned about moving forward? You know, maybe not just against Texas A&M, but with the rest of the season. Are there some things that are starting to pop up that you're a little worried about or concerned about, or some things that need to be tightened up that I didn't mention quite yet? But there's going to be plenty of talk, trust me, there's going to be plenty of talk about Texas A&M on the website, on the channel. Like I said, I've already been working ahead on learning more about Texas A&M. And Tyler did say Texas A&M was the team he studied the most in the offseason. Certainly getting closer to the season, they focused on their first two opponents, but it makes sense. Texas A&M is a big-time opponent, and it's early on in the year, and it's not a team he's familiar with. So that makes sense. We will see how it plays out. Great to see guys already, like Tyler, already putting in extra work to get ready for this big game. I'm excited, looking forward to giving you guys as much information as possible. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you have a good rest of the day, and take care.